Hello, ladies and gentlemen, witches of all ages. The AAA-Hole Podcast is live. I am your AAA-Hole, otherwise known as Death Witch. If you're watching this live on stream, hello. And if you're listening to me in your ear hole, enjoy your jog. Enjoy your commute to work. Enjoy whatever you're taking us to today. Me and my co-host, who's here as always, Ozzy. Say hey to everybody, Ozzy.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
We will be going over our impressions of the Anthem VIP demo, as well as the news around Metroid Prime 4 switching developers and what that could mean for the game. And if we got time to squeeze it in, a little thoughts on some Kingdom Hearts 3 action. But we'll start with Anthem. Let me get that up on the screen for our visual viewers here. So what's important to note here is that this is the Anthem VIP demo. So I want to address that first. I want to point that out. This is a demo, not a beta. That's the number one argument I see online for everybody trying to excuse the sheer number of bugs, glitches, and problems that are had in this. Is, oh, that's what betas are for. This isn't a beta, though. This is a demo. This is supposed to be your taste of the full experience. Okay, this is like getting a free sample of, one of those, free sample of some sweet and sour chicken from the little Japanese lady outside of the food stand at the mall. All right? That's not a beta. You're not testing it to tell them what's wrong with it. They're advertising to you. And that's what Anthem's demo was. It was an advertisement. It was a way that was supposed to get the game hyped. And if that is what this was meant to do, in my personal opinion, it fell flat on its face. That said, as a game, it doesn't look terrible. It's got some promise. It's not the quote unquote Destiny killer everyone was thinking it's going to be. In fact, it's a lot closer to. Everyone keeps comparing it to Warframe, but my personal takeaway from it, this reminded me a lot more of anybody from the 360 era could remember Capcom's Lost Planet series. To me, this felt a lot more like that, with elements of Warframe thrown into it. Sort of a Lost Planet meets Warframe instead of a Destiny meets Warframe. I mean, yeah, it's got the colored loot thing, but that's not really a Destiny thing. I mean, Diablo 3 does that. A lot of games do that. That's just kind of standard at this point in time. When you're on the ground, the ground-based shooting mechanics feel a lot like Lost Planet. When you jump up in the air and you use the jetpack for more than just a boost, you immediately enter what I feel is the worst part of Warframe. It turns into Arcwing mode. And you're just flying around shooting shit. The flying mechanics aren't terrible, just like I guess you could argue that they're not terrible on Warframe.
From what we saw during the demos that we watched, I'd probably more say it more instead of Arcwing, it more goes Iron Man mode.
Yeah, I mean, it's got an Iron Man animation and feel to it, but the actual controls and just the way it plays is very Arcwing-ish. As in, you've just got kind of one speed, very limited control of your guns while you're in the air flying around. I never, you never aim down sights. Your obstruction's kind of viewed by your character while you're in the air, as opposed to when you're on the ground. To me, I thought the jetpack was probably the worst part of it. And jumping around on the ground feels a lot like Lost Planet until you go to jetpack boost, and then you get kind of a mix between Destiny and Warframe's Arcwing, where when you're just boosting around jumping, it's kind of got that floaty Destiny feel to it. It didn't appear to have Destiny's rubber band physics, where you just bounce off everything you touch. That's a positive.
That would have been. Hey, there's still time for them to put it in.
I mean, that's still the worst part of any game made by Bungie, in my opinion. It was all through Halo, and it's rampant in Destiny. Just the way your character feels like he's made of rubber, and if you bounce into anything, it's like you're fighting this force to try to course correct, and bumping into another player, like not even a wall or something. Like I've jumped and had other players bump into me, and it just pushed me, and I just float off the stage because I was in the middle of a floaty jump in Destiny and someone bumped into me, and it's like hitting a beach ball. You just float off into the distance, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's either float or fall. And it didn't seem to suffer from that problem, so that's a plus. The physics, it felt like your character, and especially a character in a giant fucking mech suit, yeah, you should have some weight to you. And it looked like he had some weight to him. As far as the problems with the demo goes, they are... I mean, there was a lot.
And rampant.
There was a lot. So going over them real quick, there were a lot of people, and I saw this in numerous live streams, which is just, this is an embarrassing start for a demo, for a first taste of a game, when there were streams of people who took 2 to 3 hours to even get to play the game, to just get a connection to the server going. Just multiple crashes. It was either they had trouble connecting, or when they finally were able to connect, the game would crash. Or when they were finally able to connect, they'd hit the infinite loading glitch, where the game just loaded in infinitely, and they're forced to, crash the game and start over. Disconnections during a match, this is something they're seriously going to have to address, because this, unless they get better servers, this is going to break the progression of the game, and I can see a lot of rage quitters and people just not worth my money. I saw more than one streamer doing the final boss fight of the demo, or some of the missions, and they'd spend 20, 30 minutes on that mission, and they're grinding away, and then at the end of the match, when it's tallying up your scores and tallying up your XP and going over your loot you earned, somebody gets disconnected. And it's weird the way they get disconnected, because they don't get an error message or get kicked back to the main menu. On their screen, they're still seeing the results, but when they exit out of the results screen, they're in a lobby by themselves. But all that gear, all that XP, all that stuff they earned during that match that they just saw on the results screen, and that, mind you, didn't kick them out, didn't give them an error. They didn't even know they'd been disconnected from the match. But when they get back to the title screen, they're not in their party anymore, and all that stuff they earned is gone. Didn't count. XP bar didn't move, no gear in your inventory, you got nothing for it. That's a big one. Now, BioWare made a blog post, in an official blog post, noting the changes and fixes that they admit the VIP demo had, and that it got off to, quote, a rocky start. The issues that were addressed during the VIP demo include entitlement bug fixes, server performances, and updates addressing the rubber banding issue, so lag, basically. Fixes for infinite loads, which I just went over, and more that are being investigated. Platform bugs to validate the Javelin unlocks are being squashed, so there were instances of people that were unlocking things that wouldn't unlock for them. Client and platform login bugs, which I went over, people taking 2 or 3 hours just to log in. So that's them scratching the surface here. That's not all the bugs that were encountered. Those are just the game-breaking ones. This thing is... It's not Fallout 76 level riddled with bugs, but it's definitely in need of work. I mean, we are, 6 weeks away from launch? I think is what they said. Like, this isn't beta test phase. This isn't months away from launch. This is 6 weeks. So they're basically prioritizing the stuff that's going to just prevent people from outright playing or progressing through the game. And I guess the other stuff's just going to have to be fixed via hot fixes after the game's launch. That said, we're looking at a pretty bad launch for this game. There is an open demo coming Friday, February 1st. So if you didn't, that was another thing that made everybody mad about this, is this VIP demo was a selling point. That's why I keep trying to remind people when they get online and you start screaming stuff like, oh, you're entitled, and people calling each other entitled like it's a bad thing. This wasn't a free demo. This was a VIP demo. This was a paid demo. So yes, you should feel entitled because you gave them your money because you were excited for something that you were promised,
You pre-ordered the game.
Yeah.
This is your incentive for pre-ordering.
Right. This is your hey, here's a bonus for pre-ordering. So you were already hyped. You were already sold on the game, which means you already believed all the stuff that they told you. And then you got your hands on this demo, and the game feels broken in a demo. And a lot of the things you were promised don't feel like they were there or even ready yet. Yeah, you're entitled. You paid for this. Everyone playing this demo. I did not pre-order. I did not play the demo. I just watched a lot of streams. I'm waiting for the open one because I do not pre-order games. Very, very, very rarely do I pre-order games. Like, I have to 100% know that what I'm paying for before the game launches is what I'm getting. And very few times do I do that anymore because the pre-order system is, I mean, if we're getting into that, it's an abused system and a scam, and people should stop. People should stop pre-ordering because pre-order culture is ruining gaming with these locked and timed exclusives and things that are all locked behind pre-orders. Just stop. Stop buying into that bullshit and make them earn your money. Don't buy into hype. And that I don't do. The few times I've pre-ordered in the last year, which I think was twice, was because I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt I was going to buy this game anyway. One time being Smash Brothers Ultimate. That was just going to get bought. Like, it's Smash Brothers. I know what I'm getting. So, yeah, I'll pre-order just so I can have it preloaded on my console and be able to play it at midnight instead of download it at midnight. So, the open demo comes out Friday, February the 1st. They are claiming that these list of fixes that I just listed, the entitlement bug fixes, the login errors, the infinite load bugs, the Javelin stuff not unlocking, the lag. They're aiming to have all of that fixed in time for that demo, which is a big role to fill, considering that the first is 3 days away. That is this Friday. We are about 3 days away from this, depending on where you live. So, I don't know if they'll get all that fixed in time. I'm going to be streaming this live on Friday the 1st, as soon as I get off work, so around midnight Eastern, my usual start time. I plan to be playing this, and we'll give it a full breakdown. I'm not going to say I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt, because that's another thing that people keep arguing about, is that we should give the benefit of the doubt because it's BioWare, it's BioWare, it's BioWare. It's BioWare now that BioWare has been owned by EA. I've seen numerous comparisons of this game to Fallout 76 and how, we gave Bethesda the benefit of the doubt and they get a free pass for their bugs. Why doesn't BioWare? And to that I say, A, we shouldn't be giving free passes to any company for bugs. We should be holding them accountable for things that are broken. But B, if you're going to give a free pass, those are very different situations. Bethesda, it was expected from them because they've had those same bugs in their games for the better part of a decade. At this point, yes, they shouldn't have benefit of the doubt and they shouldn't have excuses, but it also wouldn't surprise anybody. BioWare games were notorious for being very well put together, very well done. The original Mass Effect games, the original Dragon Age games, yeah, they had bugs, but nothing like this. For the most part, they were well put together AAA games. And now, BioWare has the stamp of EA on it. Bethesda doesn't have any new stamp on it. This is just Bethesda being Bethesda. If anything, Bethesda shouldn't have your benefit of the doubt, and neither should BioWare. Now that it's got the stamp of EA on it, that stamp should come with a proceed with caution warning. This is a company that has not earned your benefit of the doubt. As much as I feel bad for Bethesda, for BioWare here, if Andromeda taught us anything, it's that once EA got their claws on BioWare, things started to fall apart. The ridiculous schedules that they put them on means they don't have time to properly test their games and they come out a buggy mess. The microtransactions, they are inevitably going to force down everyone's throat in there. The piss poor marketing. It's EA being EA. And BioWare is as much a victim as you are of this, but EA has not earned your benefit of the doubt. I don't care if BioWare is the actual developer behind the game. They are still under the thumb of EA. EA is still pulling those strings. EA is still pulling those shots. And looking back at the history, the quality of BioWare games went in the fucking toilet when EA bought them out. And
also, certain bugs are inexcusable. Okay, a dragon flying backwards or really messed up looking NPC distortions can be laughable at times, but breaking bugs like losing hours of progression, getting kicked from servers, minutes in or even seconds into a game, having infinite loading bugs, these sort of things are not excusable in any game that is released from any studio. Bethesda, BioWare, even we'll say Nintendo. None of these companies get a free pass for those bugs.
Yeah, Ozzy brings up a great point. When people talk about the free pass that they gave to Bethesda, it was for those funny, humorous bugs you can make videos on that, yeah, you give them a free pass for those because those make YouTube channels popular. Those make for great compilation videos. Those are fun. When Bethesda did drop the ball and had game-breaking bugs, it seemed like their free pass had expired. I mean, this happened back on PS3 with New Vegas deleting save files. This happened in Force with 76, with server crashes, with progression being lost, with things just flat out not working. Yeah, it had the cute, funny bugs too, like enemies flying around in T-poses and shit like that, pointing guns at their own face, that kind of thing. Those are funny. But when it starts to break the gameplay experience, yeah, your free pass, your benefit of the doubt is gone. And Andromeda was riddled with those. Like everything BioWare has done since EA bought them out has been riddled with those, and I blame that 100% on EA, putting these developers, these studios that they purchase, that they just acquire, putting them under impossible goals, these ridiculous time constraints, like saying, hey, you know how it took you years to make the first Mass Effect the masterpiece that it was? Well, we need one that's bigger and better. Oh, and we need it in under a year. I mean, you're asking the impossible here. So, of course, this thing was going to be riddled with bugs. Now, I'm very curious to see how much of this they can get under control in time for the open demo this Friday. So, anybody looking to try this for yourself, and I encourage you to, free open demos should be encouraged. All right, that's the company being transparent. That's the company saying, we don't need anything from you ahead of time in order to play this. We're confident enough in our product to let you play it for free, to give you a taste. Like a drug dealer, the first hit's free and this is how we're going to get you hooked. That's what demos should be for. If you're using them at selling points for pre-orders, then I don't think anybody complaining about this demo was entitled. They all paid for it, and they all have a right to be disappointed by it, have a right to voice their opinion and give their feedback and have complaints. They are paying customers. I'm still going to do the same.
If you're complaining about the extremely bad bugs, like the loss of progression and all of that, that's not entitlement. That's pointing out a severely flawed system.
Yeah, you have to learn the difference between entitlement and feedback. I cannot count the number of forums I've gone on, or YouTube comment sections or whatever, complaining about not just this game, any game. And anyone with a complaint immediately gets downvoted to hell on Reddit, gets called entitled, gets called whiny, gets called this. Is the community as a whole, the gaming community as a whole is way too fucking accepting of shit that should be unfucking acceptable. You would not accept this anywhere else in your life. If you went to watch a movie in a theater and the projector that was projecting the movie had bugs and it was skipping scenes or interrupting your movie experience, yeah, everybody would complain and you'd have a fucking right to.
Or more if you went to work you did your week's work, and then your boss tells you, "Oh, we had a server crash. You're not getting paid this week." That would be an issue.
Yeah, there's a ton of examples that are like that anywhere else in your life where you'd be a paying customer and so you didn't get what you paid for, you would complain. That's how it works. That's how business should work. And I don't know why the video game industry, why this community gives excuses for shit that should be inexcusable. We need to hold developers, publishers to better standards than this. And it's fanboyism sometimes, and sometimes I don't know where it comes from. Why would you defend these practices? Why would you let this happen if you bought a car and, you know, while you were driving, suddenly one of the pedals stopped working? It's just a bug. It's just a glitch. You know, bring it in, we'll fix it. Yeah.
It more comes down, in my opinion, to the sunk cost fallacy that they've put down money onto this, so they have to defend it in order to make it so they haven't wasted their money.
Which brings me to my next point. Complaining on forums and YouTube is great. It's a great way to voice your opinion and make a game better. Remember, anytime someone accuses you of being entitled, these companies ask for your feedback. They literally ask for your opinion. They ask you to go online and quote unquote whine or bitch about the things you're entitled to. And that's great. That can help make a game better. But we need to hold them to better standards before those games come out. We don't, this habit, this pattern of releasing games in a broken, unfinished state with the promise to finish them later should be unacceptable. And unfortunately, all the feedback, entitled whining, or whatever you want to call it in the world won't fix that. The only thing that's going to fix that is, like Ozzy said, is if you vote with your fucking wallets and you quit giving them money. All right, so fine. You gave Fallout 76 your money. You pre-ordered it, you gave it your money, and it disappointed you greatly. And now they won't give you your money back. Well, yeah, you complained, and take this as a lesson. Never buy from them again. Don't support this anymore. Same thing with Anthem. Don't find ways to justify you spending your money and then keep playing the game and then spend more on it. Voice your opinion that you're disappointed in what you spent your money on. And now that company has lost your business. And when they lose business, they change. That's how business works. You do what you need to do to keep your customers, especially when your business relies on them coming back for more.
You don't need to pre-order. Let the other morons jump in the pool first and let them find out if it's full of rotten feces or if it's an actually good experience. And then when they find out that it's a bug-ridden pile of whatever, then you'll know, yeah, I'm lucky I didn't jump into that with everyone else.
Yeah, remember, you're buying a game here. All right, you're not buying a house. These companies depend on your added support, on your loyalty as a customer to survive. They're not selling to new players every time they make a new game. They're selling to their fans, and they need fans to survive. And if they start losing fans, if they start losing business because we no longer give them these free passes that we've been giving them as companies for releasing half-finished garbage and then the promise of fixing it later, shit will change. But until then, shit's not going to change. You're buying a video game. You're not buying a house. Housing companies don't survive because they keep selling houses to the same families. You don't buy 3 or 4 houses. You don't buy a new house every year, but you might buy a new Call of Duty every year. You might buy a new Assassin's Creed every year. And that's what these games want you to do. These companies keep wanting you to come back. And when this is what they give you, broken games, broken promises, and then, we'll give us more money and we'll fix it in the DLC. How many times do you need to be scammed before you learn your lesson? Don't be part of the problem. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And going online and complaining about it, but then opening your wallet when you're done and still purchasing it means nothing. All right? Think of it like a relationship. If your girlfriend cheats on you and you catch her, and she begs and begs and begs for that second chance, and you take her back, you give her that second chance and you say, oh, well, she had a good excuse and she promises it'll never happen again and she's going to get better. And then a month later, she does it again. You have no one to blame but yourself. You encourage the behavior, you let her get away with it, of course she's going to do it again. And it's the same thing with these companies. You encourage the behavior, you give them your money, you let them get away with releasing broken games. Of course they're going to keep doing it. It's worked in the past. So stop attacking each other for being entitled. I say that with air quotes. Being entitled. You are entitled. You paid for this. You paid for something. You're entitled to the thing you paid for. That's not just true in gaming. That's true everywhere you spend money. That's literally how money works.
You are entitled to a working experience.
You're entitled to the thing you paid for. You are entitled to that. If you pay for something and then you get something completely different, there are laws to prevent that from happening. You are entitled to a refund, to something. Otherwise, we'd be going back to the 1920s with the fucking traveling doctors. All right, it's Dr. Kleinstein's miracle juice. It'll cure you, blah, 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 blah. And then they're selling you fucking water in a bottle. We can't go back to that. And that's what the gaming industry has become. They get up here with these hype trains and they sell you a promise at E3, and then you get the game and it looks nothing like what they showed you at E3. It's got a graphical downgrade, which Anthem's been accused of on console. Now the PC port, I'll give them credit. The PC looks like it's might be what they showed at E3, but I mean, Watch Dogs did the same thing. Numerous other games have done the same thing where they show you something completely different to get you to pre-order and then give you something else. They give it a downgrade. They cut parts of the game out, quite obviously, to sell you as DLC. That's inexcusable. And it can't happen anymore. And the only ones who can change it are us. And we need to quit attacking each other and start attacking these companies. And EA especially has not earned your benefit of the doubt. If anything, EA's name being on the front of anything should be just a big proceed with caution warning, and you should be more critical, not less. That said, I don't want Anthem to fail as a game, even if it doesn't look like one I'm going to buy. I'm not super excited about it. I am curious. Curious enough that I'll try this open demo that's coming out on Friday. I'll be streaming that.
Yeah. I've looked at it, and it's basically like there's nothing in there that really grips me as something special. It looks to play like Destiny, like Warframe. It's that generic third-person shooter. It doesn't matter that you're in a mech suit. That's your character. It could look like Mickey Mouse for all we care. It still plays that same generic, over-the-shoulder, point at the thing until its health bar goes down to 0 and it falls over and spits out a whole bunch of loot.
The whole pray to RNGesus thing that, you get a good drop and you get good loot, rinse and repeat thing. That's not a bad gameplay mechanic. It can be done right. Games like Diablo do it right. That's how they've survived as long as they have. Destiny's not terrible with it. It was bad at the start, and they've slowly got better with it over time, and I feel like it's in a good place now as far as its loot pool and drops go. You'll have your good days and your bad with any game where you're fighting an RNG system. My main complaints with Anthem, from what I've seen, is one, it's already been accused, and I don't know this because I didn't play Andromeda, but I've seen a post on Reddit and posts from people who actually did finish Andromeda and who actually did like it, that there are those people out there, they do exist, complaining that Anthem has reused assets from Andromeda. I mean, they're running on the same engine.
Ooh.
It's not out of the realm of possibility that they've just reused some assets. So that's...
Oh, yeah.
That's not necessarily a bad thing, depending on the assets that were reused. I'm going to have to look up some actual examples when someone makes a video with some actual examples comparing the two. If it's stuff like rocks and scenery, then who gives a shit? If you're reusing, stuff for characters and stuff for locations, and you're just copy pasting, in order to make EA's ridiculous time frame for your development cycle, as long as it's not blaringly obvious, it can be acceptable to reuse assets. Famously, Majora's Mask reused a lot of assets from Ocarina of Time, and that's still considered a classic. So reusing assets isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's dependent on how it's done. My complaints with Anthem is that it doesn't seem to play to any of BioWare's strengths, especially if you're reusing assets from an RPG game. This doesn't seem to have any of BioWare's trademark RPG elements in it. I saw no dialogue trees in any of the interactions with people. The story seems bare bones.
If there at all, yeah.
Yeah, like Destiny level bare bones. Yeah.
What they should be focusing on to grip people in is focusing on what the story is. Because, yeah, show us the gameplay, show us what we're in for, and we kind of get what we're in for with the gameplay, because it's, as I've said, it's generic. It's cookie cutter, by the book, from basically taking off a recipe from the shelf. Show us what you're actually bringing new. Show us this story. What is there in this game for us to get invested in? And going on the past of what BioWare's done, they can write really good stories. Mass Effect 1, 2, and yes, I'll even say 3, have been some of my favorite storylined games of the past 10 years, or 20 years, whatever. So show us that. Show us what you're bringing, and not just shoot the thing to get the gun.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with doing something that's been done before, if you can put your own unique spin on it and make it your own. And BioWare could definitely do that story-wise. You want to kill Destiny? That's how you fucking do it. You don't do it in the gameplay. Destiny's not getting hounded for its gameplay. It's getting hounded for its mechanics and its lack of story. That's what got it all the hate when it launched. I mean, I'm going way back to Destiny 1's launch here. It got hounded for lack of content, and story being one of those main lacks of content. The actual gameplay, the shooting mechanics, the way loot was distributed, the leveling system, those were all fine. People liked those. They didn't like that the story was almost non-existent. They didn't like that, there was a lack of in-game content. There were all these things that they didn't like that, yeah, Destiny fixed over time. But you want to kill it out the gate, that's how you do it. You focus on your story and in-game content. The leveling system can be, cookie cutter Destiny style. It can be cookie cutter, hey, we borrowed a little from Warframe, hey, we borrowed a little from Destiny, and here's our progression. So that's fine. You can have a skill tree. You can have randomized colored loot. You can do all those things. You can have a ultimate, special ability system similar to Destiny's. That's fine. But you're not going to kill Destiny with just that. You're going to need to focus on your story, and there's not a lot of that there from what I've saw. Going back to that gameplay, they're not going to kill it there either. And again, I'm not going to be able to play the game until Friday, but from what I've seen, and I watched, hours worth of streams here, from what I've seen, you're not killing it in the gameplay department, because you've got a lot of enemies that look the same. You don't have much variety in your enemies. A lot of them looked like they borrowed from Destiny, or they're very similar. So, the spider-like tanks, where their weak point is the leg. That's ripped straight from Destiny. A lot of the regular enemies and just the elite ones don't do anything different or make themselves special. They're just bullet sponges that just take a long time to kill. There just seems to be, hey, this is how we make things higher level and harder. Give it more HP and have it do more damage. There's no added mechanics to it. There's nothing fun there. It's just do the same thing you did, 20 minutes ago, but now you have to do it longer. Like, that gets old fast. And Destiny doesn't have a huge assortment of character types either or enemy types either when it comes to enemies. They got a few races and a few different types per race, but what makes them different is their boss fights all have very interesting mechanics. The raids require a level of teamwork and have a mechanic all their own. The strikes are completely different. Like, there's so many different ways to encounter these same races that it doesn't feel like you're rinsing and repeating as much. I mean, there's going to be some of that in every grindy game. Every grindy game, you're going to rinse and repeat because you're going to be doing the same thing over and over to an extent. But at least in Destiny, when you see an elite version of an enemy, they're going to have a different move set. They're going to have different abilities. It's not just the same enemy, but with more health. It's a different version of that enemy. It's aesthetically, it's a variation. It has different moves. It might fire rockets instead of machine guns. It might have a shield. It has these new mechanics to it. Even almost like a mini boss in itself. And that's what an elite should feel like. A mini boss. And Anthem didn't seem to have that. The elites in that game were just regular enemies, not even a different color, just different color health bar, different color name, and they just took an ass load more shots to kill. That's it. That's the only difference. So I'm going into Anthem with a grain of salt. I was hoping the story would be what would make it the Destiny killer, would pull me away from Destiny. Doesn't look like that's going to be there. The mech mechanics look like nothing new. It's your ground-based movement feels like Lost Planet. Your jetpack-based movement feels like Warframe's Arcwing, and your shooting and looting feels like Destiny. So there's nothing new here. That doesn't mean it can't be done well. It's just so far I'm not seeing much hint of that. So that's our thoughts on Anthem. What's up, Shadow? I do comments at the end, but enjoy the podcast. We still got one more topic to cover, and then we'll be going to answer. We're about halfway through this now. I'm going to switch over and talk about the other little bit of gaming news that has me maybe worried, maybe not. I'll have to. I don't know. I'm on the fence with this one here. Why is that so big? Sorry.
That's what she said.
Yeah, let me adjust this picture. All right, Metroid Prime 4. If we could get into talking about Metroid Prime 4 and the announcement that Nintendo made that they have basically scrapped the development of Metroid Prime 4 and they've handed it over to another studio, to Retro Studios, which was the studio, I believe, responsible for the original Metroid Prime. So not necessarily a bad thing, but it makes you wonder, like, what was their original vision for Metroid Prime 4, and how did it go so wrong that they felt that they needed to give it back to the developer that originally made it and have them just do it again? I mean, was Nintendo having trouble making it work the way it originally worked in those other games? So I have a quote here from them, from Nintendo themselves, that say, although this is very regrettable, we must let you know that the current development process has not reached the standards we seek in a sequel for Metroid Prime. Nintendo always strives for the highest in quality of our games, and in the development phase, we challenge ourselves and confront whether the game is living up to that quality on a daily basis. From this perspective, we have determined that the current development status of Metroid Prime 4 is very challenged, and we had to make a difficult decision as a development team. We have decided to re-examine the development structure and change it. It says that he went on to confirm that they will work in trust and collaboration with the studio that developed the original series and restart development from the beginning. So you've got a delay here right off gate. Now, there's no telling when this is going to come out now. They have basically started completely from scratch.
I'm more than willing to guess that it will not be in 2019. Possibly late 2020, mid to late 2020 would be my guess.
Yeah, I'm guessing we won't see that this year. Now, that's probably why they've only shown a title screen. If anything, I'd say the next E3 you may get some gameplay footage, or at least more than a title screen. But he goes on to say this change will essentially mean restarting the development from the beginning, so the completion of the game will be delayed from our initial plan. It will be a long road until the next time we will be able to update you on the development process. and development time will be extensive. So I'm getting some good news there. I mean, developments are, delay in development. Yeah, that's obviously a bummer, but I'm fine with games that are delayed if it means a better product in the end. We just talked about how Anthem is probably not as good a product as it could have been if it hadn't been under the time constraint that EA puts all its developers under. So that's why I'm fine with the delay. Maybe that should have had a delay or two. So Metroid Prime having a delay means it could be better. The development will be extensive. It's going to be a while before they update us on it. So this may be the last.
Sounds like it's going to be at E3.
Yeah, which means may see something at E3, may not.
I doubt it. I would probably say we'll see. We'll get our first hints of it either late this year or January next year, with a strong showing at E3 next year. Would be my guess.
Hopefully, but they say, and I'll read the last of his quote here, that they want the new Metroid Prime to stand shoulder to shoulder with the past Metroid Prime titles. So they want it to feel like you never got off that train, Like it didn't have this big gap between the last game and this one. Like you can dive right in from playing the third one, and if you go back and replay the trilogy and then jump into the fourth one, you'll feel right at home. You'll feel like it'll feel like a Metroid Prime game, and that's what it should feel like. I think their best course of action, and I don't know if they're planning this or not, none of that was mentioned, but I think doing, since the Switch seems to be the console of ports, I think doing
would need to bring bring the trilogy.
Yeah, something to tide people over until the fourth one and keep that hype train going. Not that Nintendo really needs hype trains because its fan base is ridiculous, but I mean, it's Metroid, it's gonna fucking sell. But I mean, giving people an HD remaster of the trilogy, you don't have to remake it like Capcom did Resident Evil 2. You can just remaster it. Just put it in HD so it'll feel more at home on HD televisions and feel more modernized, but you can still make it the original game. Just remaster it, put it in a compilation, bam, put it on the eShop. Put it out for sale. That'll give people, that's 3 full games to give people something to tide them over. I'd buy that. I would absolutely be.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a long time since I played the Metroid Prime games. I remember not liking them as much as I did the 2D Metroid games, but I think that's just a personal taste. They weren't bad games by any means. I did like them. And they definitely felt like Metroid. I can't think of a better way that they could have made it first person. Aside from the controls, because, this came out back on GameCube, and first-person shooters on GameCube are non-existent. So everything was it had this weird control scheme to it that I remember not liking, where everything was done with one stick, aiming and moving. So making it a twin-stick shooter would be better, I feel. But it did a decent job once I got used to the controls, and it felt like a Metroid game. I'm scanning things and gathering lore and backtracking and getting abilities that give me access to new areas. And it definitely had that creepy claustrophobic vibe that you get on the 2D Metroid games where you're just in all these small corridors. It felt like a 3D, Metroid game, and that's what it should feel like. That said, I think Metroid works better as a 2D game. The 2D game spawned an entire genre, Metroidvania, if you will. It set standards, and I feel that Metroid Prime didn't set any standards. It was a good game, and it definitely had it was definitely a Metroid game, but it wasn't the game changer that, the 2D ones did. It didn't spawn an entire genre. So while I'm excited for Metroid Prime 4, I'm not one of the people who are just like, gotta have it now and just like completely worried because of the delay and how long it's going to take for me to get it. They can, as far as I'm concerned, they can take as long as they need, as long as it's good. That said, I do want to see some more Metroid stuff in the meantime to tide me over. I've been itching for another Metroid game since the remake of 2 on the 3DS, which was stellar, by the way, and that wasn't made by Nintendo either. That was another game that they outsourced to another company. If I'm not mistaken, it was the same company that did this one. Let me look that up. Let's look that one up real quick. Metroid Samus Returns. And we'll look up the developer real quick. No, it was developed by Mercury Steam in conjunction with Nintendo. So this one's going to be Retroid Studios in conjunction with Nintendo. But I mean, that game proved that, just because Nintendo's not making it in-house doesn't mean it's going to be bad. That these
well, that's another side. That's another side project that they could possibly do. In the meantime, as well, is possibly remake one of the greatest Metroid games in all time in the HD Samus Returns style. So remake Super Metroid in that.
You could, but I feel like it's not. I feel like that's not necessary for Super Metroid. Super Metroid had all of the things you needed in a Metroid game.
I'm not saying it's necessary, but
I would personally want to see them
keep the same game, but give it a fresh coat of paint.
I would agree if I didn't already think that Super Metroid was a masterpiece. Metroid 2 needed this. It was far from a masterpiece. It didn't have any of the things that modern day Metroid fans expect.
It was
from
a Game Boy game.
Yeah, well, I mean, that one and the first one were the only two in the series that didn't have a map, that didn't have any of the Metroidvania elements that make Metroid games what they are. So it needed a remake as bad as the first one did. And the first one got a remake on Game Boy Advance in the form of Zero Mission, and it was stellar. It was amazing. Metroid 2 needed that remake something serious. Bad enough that fans actually remade the game first. And honestly, they could have just hired those guys and sold that one, and it would have been amazing. That one played a lot like Super Metroid. It was Metroid 2 done in the style of Super Metroid. But I'm happy with the remake that we got. In the meantime, I mean, as long as we're outsourcing Metroid games to other companies and proving that you can still do a good job with those, I would love for them to give another game to Mercury Steam and let them make an absolutely original game. Maybe a game that'll bridge the gap between, Metroid Prime 3 and 4. Give us kind of a prequel game set in the style of 2D Metroid to tide us over and to get us hyped for Metroid Prime 4. Do a little tie-in game. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that they could do, but I would like to see something new and original. I feel like I've played all those old games 100 times over. In fact, I just recently played through Super Metroid again. So that's still fresh in my mind right now. But I'd love to see them remake not remake, but I'd love to see them just make something new. I think that's why so many people are so excited for Metroid Prime 4, because it's the first new game in the series since Metroid Prime 3. Like, even the stuff we've gotten since then has just been remakes. This is the first new chronological game in the series, the first new expansion of the story to tell us something new. I feel like we're just, playing Groundhog Day with the franchise at this point, where we're reliving the same story and the same stuff over and over. So everyone seems to be taking it as good news. It's gotten good reception, which is good. Most of the time when a game gets announced that it's got a delay or it's been delayed, it's usually the receptions are mixed at best. Anthem was another prime example of that. It got, Phelan pointed out that they had a huge the delay for Anthem was huge, and it should have been out already, and that was in it. And it got delayed, and then they put out a demo that's in this state, which makes you wonder why it was delayed at all. Is it that troublesome, or what the problem was? But delays are usually met with a grain of salt. But when Nintendo does a delay, especially when it's one where it's like, we didn't want to fuck it up, so we gave it to this company that made it a thing to begin with, it's a delay that makes sense. And I don't think anyone's giving them shit for it. I don't think anyone's questioning the delay there. You think it had to do with loot boxes for Anthem? Probably. Knowing EA, they probably had a huge implementation of loot boxes, and then Star Wars happened, and they had to backpedal, and that's probably what that had to do with. So, like I said, EA hasn't earned your benefit of the doubt the way that Nintendo has. Nintendo isn't perfect. They make their share of mistakes, but they haven't outright screwed over games, screwed over other developers, or screwed over their companies in the way that Electronic Arts has. So I feel like they've still earned your benefit of the doubt, and they're still a pretty solid company. So, I usually give Nintendo a pass on mistakes that they make, unless they're just mistakes that are just so dumb. I'm like, how could you make this? Which is basically every decision Nintendo makes regarding online play. But that's a conversation for another time. Nintendo still hasn't figured out how the internet works. All right, last topic we'll hit on real quick before we take some comments from the chat from our live viewers. It's Kingdom Hearts 3. It's finally coming. We finally got some gameplay. We finally got a better look at it. We finally got some stuff to look forward to here. The question is, how hype are people for Kingdom Hearts 3? Are you one of the people still super hyped about it? Because I get it. It's the third game in the series, and everyone goes, oh, man, it's been forever. But has it? I mean, we've had side story after spinoff after side stories since Kingdom Hearts 2 came out, to the point that I can't even follow the plot anymore. Not that the plot was super great to begin with. It was pretty straightforward in the first one. It got a little confusing in the second one, but I blame that on what I call Metal Gear Solid 2 syndrome, where they did a bait and switch and got you excited for a sequel and then threw a whole new main character at you for no reason with no explanation. So I think that's probably why 2 came off a bit confusing, and then there was spin-off games to explain the confusion, and that created more confusion, so then there was spin-off games of spin-off games to explain the confusion of those spin-off games. I mean, they've made a complete encyclopedia game called The Story So Far that puts these things in chronological order in one streamlined experience so you can get the story so far. But at this point, does anyone even really care about the story anymore is what I'm asking? Or is it just really cool to see Sephiroth fight Mickey Mouse with a giant key? Is it really cool to explore, the Disney worlds while they're mixed with Final Fantasy characters? Because I'll be honest, that was the selling point of the original game. That was a very cool concept that everyone wanted. Is everyone actually interested in the story at this point, or are we still just sold on the concept?
Nope. Honestly, I was never interested in the story to begin with. I attempted the first one, and it just didn't catch me in any way.
I played the first one and loved it, but I didn't love the story. Like, it was real weird for me to play a Square Enix game where I wasn't interested in the story. I mean, I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan, and I play those for the story. They're RPGs, especially the old turn-based one. 6 was my favorite. So I enjoyed them, but that's what I'm asking is, did you enjoy them for the story, or did you enjoy them for the gameplay? I enjoyed just seeing the Disney characters interact with my favorite Final Fantasy characters. It was one of those crossover events that at the time hadn't been done before. I mean, this was before Avengers and before, crossover things became normal. This was one of those big crossover events that no one saw coming, and that was the hype and selling point behind it. I think if this were just a Disney game and didn't have any of the Final Fantasy characters in it, people would be confused as fuck and not as interested. And the same would be said if it were just a crossover Final Fantasy game where you had all these Final Fantasy characters from different Final Fantasy games crossing over. Do you know how I know people wouldn't be as excited for that? Because they've tried that since, and it's usually got a lukewarm reception. It's worked a few times, but for the most part, people were like, I think the first time they tried it was a fighting game that had all the Final Fantasy characters.
Yeah, some sort of tactics fighting or something like that.
Well, it was more of a like an arena type Smash Brothers kind of fighting game. They did that first. Okay. I think it was back on PS1, and it had Final Fantasy characters from 1 through 7 in it, or maybe it was 1 through 9. I can't remember how far they went with it. And it got like sequels on PSP, and it did okay, But every other time, like, I don't know, like that just didn't seem to get people as excited as Final Fantasy meets Disney. It was one of those things that it was cool to see one time, and then after that you were like, all right, I've seen it. And then people kind of lost interest. Like that gimmick had worn off, and I'm starting to wonder, has that gimmick worn off for Kingdom Hearts? I mean, at this point, we've had 2 main title games and like 12 spin-off games. It's one of the few series out there that has more spin-off games than mainline games. To the point where following the plot means you have to, and they don't go in any like order. So if you played them in the order they were released, you're just adding more confusion. Like it's at the point now where you have to play the like 2 to 3 prequel games, then play the original, then play the 2 to 3 tie-ins before the second one, then play the second one, then play the 4 or 5 tie-in games before the third, and now we get to play the third. So and they're not all on the same system, so they don't all use the same battle system, they don't all use the same mechanics. So there's a giant lack of consistency with the gameplay if you're actually trying to play these games in order to get the story. And I feel like that's gonna be blaringly obvious to anyone who hasn't played those games and doesn't know what to expect. To anyone buying Final Fantasy, anyone buying Kingdom Hearts, the story so far, that big compilation that they're trying to sell before the launch of, to get everybody caught up before the launch of Kingdom Hearts 3. I feel like anyone going into that fresh is going to love who maybe played the first one back in the day and goes, oh man, I remember these games, and then wants to go back and play all those ones they missed. They're just going to be confused. It's just, one of them's a card-based game, one of them's a turn-based game, some are action games, some are these like weird hybrids where it's a free roam action game, but you attack using card decks. Like the gameplay mechanics in them all are so all over the place that I feel like playing them back to back on one compilation in order to get caught up would be exhausting. And they're just, you would at that point, the inconsistency with the series would become blaringly obvious. Not to mention the story's just hard to follow. That said, I am super excited to play the third one, but not for the story, for the same reason I wanted to play the first one. I want to see some of my favorite Final Fantasy characters, especially the newer ones added since the release of, since the series started. So those ones that didn't exist back in the day. I want to see if they bring back some classic Final Fantasy characters, maybe from the Super Nintendo era into this. And you also have the option now you didn't have back when Kingdom Hearts 1 came out, because now Disney owns Marvel, Disney owns Star Wars, Disney owns all these new properties that may get a cameo, that may it put in. I think it'd just be fun to see them interact. But it's going to be one of those games that I don't go in expecting much story-wise. I'm just playing it because I play for the moments. And Kingdom Hearts 1, Kingdom Hearts 2, those games were filled with those little moments that were fun watching these characters interact, and they had their own little things going on. But the main story overall, could not care less about. So I'm wondering how many other people, since we're about to take some comments from the chat and end this thing, we're just touching on Kingdom Hearts 3 real quick. What's everyone's reception of Kingdom Hearts 3? How excited are you for it? And what brought you into the series to begin with? Are you one of those diehard people who needs all the lore, who's that into the story, who checks the wiki pages, who, reads all the lore and all that stuff, and you downloaded the soundtrack? Okay, I downloaded the soundtrack. It was awesome. But, were you one of those people, or were you like me? Were you one of the people that just, I just wanted to see Cloud go toe-to-toe with some Disney characters, and I wanted to see how they interact. I wanted to see how the seriousness of Sephiroth would mesh with the goofiness of Goofy side by side if, they had some characters in front of them that didn't find them so scary and intimidating, that didn't take them all seriously. That was fun for me to see them, it's kind of a fun, lighthearted version of my favorite characters. So that's the main reason that I played. So why did everybody else play? I get the feeling, Ozzy, you didn't play for the story.
I didn't play at all. I gave up.
How far did you get?
Alice in Wonderland.
That's in the first game.
Which is basically the first world.
Yeah, I was about to say, you didn't get very far. It got better. And that was another fun thing about it, was all the different worlds had their own mechanics to them. You know, obviously, the Little Mermaid's world was the dreaded underwater level. Oh, God.
Yeah, I've seen and heard things about that. And,
yeah, but there were some fun worlds there that had their own little mechanics and their own little things to them, and little Easter eggs making fun of other games. The Peter Pan level had a thing where Tinkerbell kept getting on your nerves the way Navi from Legend of Zelda did. So there were a lot of little cute moments and jokes like that is the reason that I played. Black Spyro says he doesn't have a copy yet. You're doing it tomorrow. What do you? Oh, you're gonna play through the whole complete story? Well, I hope you don't think you're gonna do it tomorrow, because it's not happening in one day. But I do come back. Do let me know. We record this podcast every Monday night. Come back next week, and Black Spyro can give us his impressions, his breakdown. Let us know what you thought of the complete story, especially if you're one of the people. Had you played all those games before, Spyro, from that are in that collection? Like, had you played them on their original systems? Because a lot of people didn't get to play all of them as they launched, because a lot of people didn't have some of those systems, myself included. Like, I mean, you started with Kingdom Hearts 1 on PS2, but then you had to start playing some of the spin-off games, and some are on DS, some are on Game Boy Advance, and then there were some on 3DS, some went to mobile. There were one or two that were Japan only that are now getting brought over here. One of them was a mobile game that then got remade for 3DS. So you had to, they were kind of all over the place as far as the platforms that they were on. So if you didn't own, 3 different handhelds and 2 different consoles, you didn't get to play them all. So that's another thing. That's the reason why I feel like selling the compilation is great. It does get people caught up, but it's also going to be jarring for them, because those gameplay styles are going to vary so wildly, and they may not be expecting it, because they're going to jump into these games they didn't even hear about or knew existed, because they never owned or got interested in the console they came out for. So I'm curious to see what somebody who hasn't played them all thinks when they jump into and plays through them. So do come back next week and let us know. Spyro, or anybody who's listening who's maybe going to play through that before the launch of Kingdom Hearts 3. And I'm on the fence about getting it myself, but I mean, come back and let us know. I want to hear the thoughts of someone who has played them all and is playing them again in the remake, to let us know how the compilation version compares to the original. And I want to know from somebody who only played the PS2 games and never got to play the spin-offs, and is now playing the spin-offs for the first time, what they think about them. So I want to get from 2 different camps there next week when we do kind of a deeper dive into Kingdom Hearts 3, because we're about to wrap this thing up. Let's see. Spyro says, I played all of them, and I understand some of the consistency is problematic, but I always loved the story. Mystery, romance, action. So going through the story and seeing the action. Yeah, I liked the action, and there were parts of the story I liked. There were parts that were just flat out creepy, because you mentioned romance, and it's cute, and it seems like a love story, and you go, aw, until you realize all the characters in it are like fucking 12. And then it's like, oh. I mean, you're seeing like 12-year-olds make out, and you don't think too hard about it, is what I'm saying. You're going to feel creepy.
Ew.
Yeah, when you realize that those kids are like just that, kids. It gets a little creepy seeing them kiss and seeing them do. Like, it feels like you're watching 12-year-olds do that stuff. So don't think too hard about it. And yeah, the romance and mystery and stuff is there. Like, I loved all the Disney. I'll be honest with you. I loved all the Disney portions of it better than the Square portions of it. There weren't enough Square portions of it, though. I mean, the Final Fantasy characters all felt like cameos. It mainly focused on Sora and his friends, which were original characters made by Square for the game, and then Disney characters. So I mainly focused on the Disney stuff and got excited with I remember in the first game, Sephiroth and some of the main best parts from Final Fantasy were hidden, completely optional parts. Like Sephiroth was a hidden boss fight in the Arena Coliseum on Hercules' world. Yeah, like a lot of them were just hidden things you never had to do. So I hope that they put a bigger focus on the Final Fantasy stuff, and I hope that they don't try to just force the Final Fantasy 15 crew down your throat and leave out some of the older stuff, because I get it. Those are the current Final Fantasy mascots, but not, like I want to see some of the older ones. I want to see some of the characters from the old school Final Fantasy games from 2 and 3 come back, and from 5 and 6, from the my 2 favorite ones, 5 and 6, have them come back. Like, I want to see more of that. So it's probably got my money. I'm not 100% sold yet, so I won't pre-order. And again, stressing my opinions on pre-orders. No one should pre-order unless you are 100% sure you're going to buy the product no matter what. Like, you're just that big a fan. It has your money even if you never knew a thing about it. Unless you're in that camp, don't pre-order. Don't encourage that culture.
And prepare to lose your money if the game sucks.
Yep. Like, unless you're just a hardcore fan who, I'm going to have it regardless, unless you're going in with that mentality, just don't. Just don't pre-order. Wait and watch a video on it. Wait for some feedback. Streamers like us exist. I try to stream new games when I buy them. I don't buy every new game that comes out, but the ones like Resident Evil 2 that I was actually interested in, I actually wanted, I will buy and stream on release. So if you're on the fence about a game, pop into a streamer. You don't have to watch me. There's a ton of other streamers who do nothing but buy new games as soon as they come out, buy them or get them for free from the developers or whatever. But there's plenty of streamers who play games the minute they're out so that you can see what they're like before you buy. Take advantage of that. If you're really going to put that $5 down to show your support for a game that you like because you got to see some of it early, don't pre-order. Give that $5 to a streamer.
There are Kingdom Hearts streams up now.
Yeah.
There are 107,000 people viewing the Kingdom Hearts streams going on at the moment. So go in, have a look. If you're worried about story, just hit it onto mute and just watch the gameplay.
Yeah, plus there's communities in those streams, so if you really wanted, you could turn the video off and just start asking the people in chat who are watching what they think and just read the chat. I mean, there's plenty of ways to get live feedback for a game. So he says the adventure was like being a kid watching weekend cartoons again for me. Looking at Sora and his friends being original Final Fantasy characters, I see it as a backdoor story for the characters that we missed that helped encourage. Yeah, and I felt that it did that. Sorry, I enjoy the series, so I have an unusual opinion. No, I mean, I totally see where you're coming from, and I think that was one of the things that drew me to the game. Wasn't so much the story of these new characters, but the fact that the characters were so young, and it had that feeling of being a kid again. Because, when you were a kid and you'd watch those Saturday morning cartoons and you'd play those old games, you imagine you're in the game. You imagine you're in the cartoon. And I feel like the game, that was its major selling point, wasn't its plot, but that it captured that spirit. It made you feel like a kid again, a kid who was, using his imagination to put himself inside a game. And if you got sucked into, a video game or a Saturday morning cartoon, that's how you would imagine it. You're jumping around from Disney World to Disney World, from Final Fantasy game to Final Fantasy game, and it did that for me too. There were some Final Fantasy characters that I didn't recognize, and it made me go back and want to play the game they were from. So it has that factor to it as well. But the story of the characters themselves wasn't the reason I feel most people played it. So, I mean, it's great that they're releasing the story so far, but I think they need to focus more on the crossover element and less on the story. I mean, yeah, tell a good story, but stop trying to make the story so complicated. Just focus on what made the game so appealing in the first place, and that's the crossover element of Final Fantasy meets Disney. Focus in on that. Stop trying to make the story complicated for the sake of being complicated, which I get is a Japanese thing. Anyone who's watched anime, or played a Japanese RPG at all knows that they tend to over-explain things and be complicated for the sake of being complicated. I just feel like Kingdom Hearts, at this point, this is the third game in the series, say that with air quotes, And it's unnecessarily complicated to a whole new level compared to, most JRPGs. So I think they need to dial it back a notch. But I think that'll do it. I think we're going to call this.
Yep.
Thank you, those of you who showed up live to watch this live recording of the AAA-Hole Podcast. And I know I'm not as angry about stuff. I'm trying not to rip into you guys personally. I am angry at the industry as a whole, and I'm angry at pre-order culture and, gamers attacking each other and all those things I covered. Yes, I am fucking angry about those, and that shit needs to stop. And if you're not part of the solution, I've said it before, you're part of the fucking problem. Stop being part of the fucking problem. All right, stop pre-ordering. Stop buying into this, oh, the game's broken, but don't refund, we'll fix it. Bullshit. And hold these companies to a higher fucking standard. But I didn't rip too hard into you guys because it's late. So, the AAA-Hole was at a 1A level, not a AAA level this episode. I apologize. But I do thank everybody for showing up. Those of you who watched live, thank you for being part of the conversation. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed it. Those of you who are downloading, watching this on YouTube, downloading it to put in your ear hole to take with you on your drive to work, on your commute, wherever, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this. New episodes, the recorded versions come out Wednesday. So if you're watching this or downloading it, you're hearing this on Wednesday. If you want to be part of the live recording, part of the conversation, and be part of the episode itself, they are recorded live on Monday nights at midnight Eastern. So it's 9 p.m. Pacific. So be here. I'm not sure what we'll be talking about next week, so follow me on Twitter, follow me on all the social medias, and enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Enjoy the rest of the stream. Those of you who are still here, we are calling this. So thanks for listening, and we will see you guys next week. Goodbye, everybody.